welcome everybody to IFAM's Mentor to Market webinar program, which we are calling Marketing Essentials for Today's Market. This is one of 4 webinars, and the goal of our webinars together is really to help you think about creating compelling visual and written content and how to use digital marketing tools to stay connected with your customers. So today we will talk about sort of what's happening in the US market from the perspective of an international folk artist. We will also have next week a webinar by Marcela Echevarria on branding basics. So how to create some of that written content to share with your customers and your community. We'll then have a webinar on photographing your product, because more and more photographs are becoming the way you represent your product in the marketplace because of COVID. And then lastly, Gurmeet Kaur will talk about how to use some digital marketing tools. So we have sort of a global objective to all of these, but each webinar is distinct in itself. So we do hope that this helps you navigate these very uncertain times in the market. So for today, we really want to focus on kind of that big overview and share with you what we see happening in the US market today from the perspective of an international folk artist or a global handmade business. So we'll do 3 things in our webinar this morning. I will speak to 3 things. One is I will share with you some data about the US market from different retail reports and articles. Second, I'm going to highlight some of the best practices that I see from global artisan brands that I think are leading, and a little bit as to why. And then I'll share some of my recommendations that I have made to global folk art businesses and handmade brands over the last few months about what to do during this time. So that's what we will cover in today's webinar. Really, when we think about the market today, and US consumers and Americans, the word that best describes this time is uncertainty. The only thing that seems certain right now is the uncertainty. Things seem to be changing every day. So this doesn't matter if you are in a small town or a large city. It doesn't matter if you have lots of money or very little money. It doesn't matter if you're working in technology or if you're working in crafts. Everybody is feeling the same thing. So most people are hoping for the best outcome in the market, and the best outcome in the US. They are hoping for the best and they're preparing for the worst. Right? So we really live in this time of great uncertainty. I wish that I had a crystal ball that could tell what the future will bring, right? But nobody has that right now. These are what we call unprecedented times, right? Nobody has been through this before. So I know that is also the case in literally every country of the world. So it is one time where we really all feel like we're in this together. So some things we do know as we look back over the last few months. So in terms of retail sales have seen the most unusual dip, right? It's a V dip. In April, retail sales declined by over 15% from March until April. So in April, we had this big decline. And then we've started to climb out of that decline. So there was total panic in retail sales in April, and people are becoming more confident. So as of July, these are total US retail sales, right? That exclude automobiles and gasoline, but pretty much have everything else included. So this is people buying accessories and artwork and things for their home. It's also people buying groceries and other consumable products. So we saw it go down, and then it's come back up to sort of what we say pre-pandemic times. So that gives us some confidence in the market, which is great. However, as we look at this, right, it's the things that people are buying and the way people are shopping has changed. So, so as of today, the way US consumers shop is changing. One way that it has changed, it's that people are spending more time and more money online, shopping online on their computers from home. So we see that the non-store retail sales have increased by 25% over the last year. So that's a significant change in the market. So that's one change, spending time online. And it's interesting because people are spending more time on their computers and on social media and on their phones and their devices. So they're spending more time and they're purchasing more online. So it really means they're researching their purchases more. So it's an opportunity for people around the world because you all have the opportunity to represent yourself online. So in some ways, this opens up great opportunity. The other way that the market has changed significantly is that department stores, so these are very large retail stores, and shopping malls, so shopping malls that have a combination of very large stores and very small stores, these are struggling, right? We see stores closing. More than 6,000 stores have closed in the United States so far this year, which is a much higher number than last year. And not only is it just stores, but it's some of the biggest and best known names as retailers in the United States. So these are some of the stored names that have either declared bankruptcy or have closed their doors entirely. So you may recognize some of these names: Pier 1 Imports, Neiman Marcus, Sur La Table, Brooks Brothers, J. Crew. So what we see is that this is both very high-end, very luxury and expensive products, as well as very inexpensive, very affordable, sort of big volume company retailers. This is both home and it is fashion. So it's really touched on all different parts of the market. So with these stores going into bankruptcy and or closing, we have shopping malls that are empty these days or almost empty. So we look at this and we say that these stores are closing. So people are not spending money at these stores, right? But we know that retail sales are about at pre-pandemic levels. So we ask ourselves, where are people shopping? Right? They're shopping online, and they're shopping for the more unique, the more authentic, the smaller retailers, right? Buying directly from the artisan, buying directly from the producer. So it's a real shift that benefits smaller makers, that benefits smaller stores that can really stay ahead. One thing to note is that these stores that have closed, they didn't close entirely because of COVID. They closed because they weren't a very healthy business before COVID. So we saw this change coming. So I don't think this is part of an evolution of change in terms of how US consumers are shopping and what they're interested in spending their money on. So for these stores and these shopping malls, COVID was just sort of the last thing that broke their business, right? They had problems before, and their problems before was that they didn't really have a unique product that was staying innovative, and they weren't providing consumers with the shopping experience that US consumers wanted. So we have this shift, and this shift towards more online and to smaller, more authentic brands and retailers is a great opportunity for all of you who have a truly authentic and unique product and can reach to customers through different channels. Another way that things are changing is what consumers are buying. And we'll talk about this more throughout this presentation. But sales are very strong and even increasing for people buying things to fix up their homes and to fix their gardens. So they're spending a lot of time making improvements to their homes. They're spending a lot of money on groceries. So they're making more meals at home. They're spending more money on sporting goods. Right? They're spending time exercising and staying healthy because they can't go to the gyms. So they're exercising. It's a way to socialize with people. They're spending money on hobbies and craft supplies. So we see people spending time learning how to make things now. And they're spending more money on musical instruments. Isn't that interesting? And we see that sales are weaker or declining for clothing and apparel because people are not going to the office, they're not going to the movies, they're not going out as much, so they're spending less money on clothing, and they're spending less money at department stores like we saw. So despite sort of all of this uncertainty and moving around, right, and these big retailers who are closing and this fluctuation of sales, there are some real bright spots. There are some very positive things happening in our market today. And maybe that's also me who wants to see the silver lining, right? I want to find the positive in what is happening and help artisan businesses and folk artists around the world take advantage of some of those positive things that are happening. So one is when we look at artisan brands, whether they're a retail store or a maker themselves or a wholesale company, we see that people are investing in digital marketing at a very rapid pace. So here's an example of a small retail store that opened its doors 1 year ago. And as soon as COVID hit, they opened up an online store. So we see those brick and mortar independent retailers opening online stores. We see trade shows and markets opening digital markets and digital trade shows. We see companies that have traditionally been online, like Amazon and others, their sales are increasing very rapidly. So opening up, figuring out ways to sell and connect and promote online and digitally is essential to making it through this COVID time. And I think it will be a permanent change in the market. So other ways they're using digital is to engage with customers with video and with content that just helps you stay connected with your customer. And Marcella and Gurmeet will be talking a lot more about this. But how do you use your social media? How do you use your email? Not just to sell things to people, but to provide interesting information. So here's an example on the left of a company called Goop, and they interview the different people who work at their company and share lifestyle tips and kind of ways, sort of show how these people are living and getting through COVID. On the other side is Injiri, which is a beautiful Indian brand. And they use their social media channels to talk about the techniques and the motifs and the history behind their product. So you can use it in all different ways. The idea here is to just stay connected to your customer, right? You know that Americans are spending more time on their computer and on social media. So how do you provide content to them that just keeps them entertained, right? It does not have to be about selling your product. It can also just be about staying connected, right? We are all feeling lonely at this time and alone. So staying connected through content. There's also lots of fun things that people are doing. This is an example of a company that makes rugs, and they sent out these patterns to their customers through social media and through email. And they had a fun competition where they asked all of their customers to color it in and make their own design, right? So it was engaging with their customer through kind of a fun craft activity. Here's another example. This is a company that makes bandanas, which is very popular right now for using as masks. And their bandanas are the picture of maps that they screen print. Well, they made coloring pages of the images of their bandanas, and they allowed people to download it off their website so they could color those maps. So kids could color those maps. Because they know that so many people are stuck at home and looking for projects. So I think all of these examples are things that you all could do a version of. So the other thing that we see is people innovating and coming up with new products. One very popular category is coming up with products for safety. So we see people that are making masks. We see people who've converted their sewing into making garments for hospital workers. We see people like distilleries who've converted, they're no longer making their whiskey and their beer and their drinks. They instead have moved that over to making hand sanitizers. Okay. So here's some examples of companies that have made masks. Shawl Project works with a women's cooperative in India. Tribal Textiles is from Rwanda, I believe. Could be definitely in Southern Africa. Both of them had immediate responses with these of just providing a product that is, right, what the customer here in the US needs today. You know, the general sense, I think, around the world is that masks are going to be here for a long time. So if you can provide some product that relates to what people need during this time of safety, it helps you stay connected with that customer and with them. So the other product innovation that we see is this whole idea of work from home. So some of the largest employers and fastest growing companies in the United States, including Google, Microsoft, Facebook, many of the tech companies have told their employees that they may permanently work at home, that they do not have to come back to the office. Others have just said you're going to work at home until the end of the year, but this is a major shift. So people are redecorating and reorganizing their homes in order to create a workspace. And as we all know, any workspace needs beautiful and inspiring product to have around, right? So people are spending money on their home, and they're especially spending money on creating these inspiring, comfortable, right, spaces where they can work and be efficient and effective and innovative, right? So really, showing your products, right? Just picturing your artwork in a setting that looks like a home office will help people, right, relate to how they could purchase your product and use it in their own world. So everybody is, or such a high percentage of our population is working from home and is going to continue to work from home. So this is not something that is going away. Some companies will come back or do a hybrid model, but the understanding is that this home office space is going to be a permanent part of people's homes. So here's some other examples. So it doesn't have to be that you have to make products for a desk, right? But what is the artwork that people are putting around, right? What are the things that are going to inspire them to stay creative and innovative? Another product innovation is around puzzles and games and crafts. So we see these products selling extremely well. There was, in the middle of April and into May, there was a shortage of puzzles in the United States because so many people purchased puzzles to keep themselves entertained at home. Now we see that spreading into different craft kits. So I think this is an opportunity for artists around the world to, whether or not you want to put together a craft kit, but also just share a technique of how to make something, share your creative process, because people are spending a lot of time learning how to make things and making things themselves. So for artists, your ability to share your craft in that way, I think is a real opportunity, and there is huge demand for it in the US market. And again, that goes back to staying connected to your customer, right? It's not just always about selling them the product, but staying connected with them so that you stay top of mind for them. So here's some other examples. People are sending out materials so that you can make your own mask. Here's another example. So Meso is a brand from Guatemala that does a lot of home textiles. They also do some wall hangings, and they put together this kit. So they send people the pieces so that they can make a small wall hanging of their own at home. And it's just a small piece. But what they've found is that this actually drove sales of their bigger pieces. So again, a way to stay connected, knowing that people are back to making things again. So another product innovation is anything related to sort of self-care and comfort. So big, fuzzy, cozy things. People are spending time at home. People are worried about the future. So what are things that can sort of transport them, right? That keeps them entertained and keeps them sort of feeling less stressed. So we see very comfortable clothing, right? Big tunics and big comfortable clothes that people can wear at home are definitely popular. And anything that brings sort of this cozy, comforting sense to their home, because people are feeling nervous and anxious about what's happening. So some other things that we see in terms of products is that people are cooking at home, right? They're not going out to eat at restaurants as much. Grocery sales have gone up and people are cooking at home. So anything related to cooking and serving, ways to share, if you can, through your social media channels or through your email, share a recipe of your favorite dish, right? Share pictures of you making that recipe. Share pictures of you sharing it with your family and friends. or if you have products that are related to food, right? Tablecloths or table linens or serving dishes or things that could be put on the table, ways to show those right now, because that's where people are spending a lot of money and time there. Anything related to family time and entertaining at home, anything related to exercise, anything related to gardening. That might change a little bit with winter coming on, but you know, that doesn't, again, it doesn't have to mean you have a product, right? But you have content, right? Do you want to share pictures of your own garden? Do you want to share pictures of plants that are native to you? Do you want to share pictures of other gardens around you, right? It's just content you can use to connect to your customer. So there is a lot of discussion around whether there's a silver lining to this COVID. And Lee Edelcourt, who many of you know through the folk art market, she has a very interesting podcast with the Business of Fashion, where she believes that because of COVID, consumers are making a big shift. And the shift is that people are going to consume less and they're going to consume better. So they're going to care more about the planet and the impact we're making, and they're going to care more about people and connecting with people. And in that, there is a huge opportunity for people who are artists or artisans or making handmade product. So she believes very much that there will be more and more consumers who are interested in the types of products that you all make. In the fashion world, we know that there's been this huge trend towards interest and concern about sustainability and the environment. And the belief is that COVID, because it is connecting us more with our environment, as we see people who are communities where people are not driving as much, and suddenly the air quality gets better, right? So people are making this connection to the importance of sustainability in terms of how we purchase. So this is all just more information of this indication that people are shopping differently, right? And in that, how they're changing, there is absolutely opportunity for all of you. So, of just very authentic product. We see in the midst of this COVID, Williams-Sonoma, which is one of the largest retailers in the US with all of their different brands, you know, they launched their sustainability initiative and report. So just choosing to do that in the midst of all of COVID, I think reinforces how important this is to Americans. Right? When they talk about sustainability, they're really talking about taking care of the planet and taking care of people and having a product that has a very clear purpose behind it. So what you all do relates to those three values considerably. So in this, there is a lot of discussion as well that the companies that are going to succeed through COVID are ones that have a very clear purpose to them. And it's companies that don't have a purpose, that their purpose is not just to make money, but that they have a very clear purpose that's reflected in their values. There's also belief that right now, what companies need to be doing, and this applies to all of you, is not try to sell people things, but also try to restate and kind of refresh your definition of your purpose. Why is it that you do the work that you do? Right? And rephrasing that, restating that, and sharing it with your community and your followers. In the US, the largest private equity firm in the US is called BlackRock, and the head of that is a guy named Larry Fink. And he writes every year this big letter to all of the shareholders, right? And everybody waits for this letter. And his letter in the last 2 years has said, any company that does not have a clear purpose above making money will cease to exist in the marketplace. Right? So this is not just about having a purpose for fair trade and ethical and sustainable brands and artists and makers. This is about the major investment firms who are saying it's not just about selling a product, it's about making a difference in the world. And when we think back to those companies, the larger companies who are declaring bankruptcy are closing, we can see that they lost their purpose. Right? They lost their real clear sense of purpose. So in the webinar with Marcella next week, really just finding ways to rephrase, refresh, and remind your community of your purpose, right? Why is it that you are doing the work that you're doing is extremely important during this time. It's what people want to hear, and they need to hear from you again and again. So what is it that you all can do right now? We unfortunately were not able to get together in person over the summer. Who knows what the marketplace will look like next year. So the most important thing that you can do now is stay connected with your customers. And that can be through email newsletters, that can be through social media, that can be through WhatsApp, that can be through all different channels. But really, making sure you identify and understand who that customer is, and then stay connected with them. And there's 3 kinds of messages that we think are effective during this time. The first message is to really explain and demonstrate. So that is explaining to them what's happening. How has COVID hit your business? How has COVID hit your work, your workshop, and your community? And it's also restating your company values and purpose, right? So it's that explain and demonstrate. The second message is to empathize and innovate, right? To just have that message of sort of, we are in this together, right? We are here for you. We know you're there. We know you're hurting. We're hurting. We know you're struggling and unsure of the future, and so are we, right? And we're in this together. So that kind of message is very, it seems to be very popular in staying connected with your customer. And then that innovate, right? So showing them new products you're coming up with, showing them things that are going to, or social media content perhaps that they could use depending on who your customer is, right? That they could share with other people. So really just showing that you understand kind of what's happening a bit in the marketplace today in terms of people working from home, people wanting products for safety, people gardening, people dining at home, right? So sharing that kind of content that shows that you're innovating in what you're doing to relate to what's happening in the US. And then the last is that message of preparation, right? That you are ready to come back to Santa Fe and sell, that you are participating in other markets, that you are shipping orders, that you are ready and able to still stay in business. So kind of that combination of 3 messages is what we believe is kind of the right formula for staying connected with your customers in a really engaging way. This is an email that Sadai Designs, who's been at the Full Cart Market, sent to all of their customers. And we thought it was a good example of, they talked about what their response was to COVID, kind of the reality of their situation, what is important to them as they go forward in life. So it can be very simple. You can share these through email newsletters, through your social media, through individual messages. There's all different ways on your website, on your Facebook page, right? Keeping those messages. This is another organization from India, Sasha. This is the email they put together, you know, just with that very inspiring message of we're all in there together and we really care about Mother Earth. And then they highlighted some of their products around sustainability because to them, that's really important. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that this has given you some insight as to what's happening in the market today here in the US, and the opportunities that it does create for artists and makers around the world. So I'm going to pause now. I do have these other resources, so we will email out. I have a list of about 10 different websites and reports that I read on a regular basis, just to kind of watch what's happening in the market. So I will email that all out so that you can continue to stay on top of what's happening in the market today.